Yeah.
Știu că greșesc, că te doresc, dar să speri e un lucru firesc. Nu pot renunța. Sunt amintiri ce se hrănesc cu lacrimi ce pe obraz se topesc. Mai caut privirea ta. Dacă tu ai plecat, nopțile am lovit în inima mea. Dacă tu n-ai mai fi, știu visele ar muri. Dacă tu ai plecat, nopțile am lovit în inima mea. Dacă tu n-ai mai fi, știu visele ar muri.
Welcome to another video, and today we have a special video for you, and that's going to be my in-house benchmark of the Fury X using AMD's latest Crimson driver. So I purchased a Fury X. I'm going to be benching it using the new Crimson drivers, and if you haven't heard about it, this is AMD's biggest overhaul of their graphics drivers in over 10 years. So we're going to be saying goodbye to Catalyst, and now this is going to be a product of their new Radeon Technologies group that AMD created to make their graphics division more agile in order to better compete with NVIDIA. So if you looked at my other video where I criticized AMD about what they need to do to gain back market share, and one of the criticism was that they need to make better drivers with frequent updates and more WHQL drivers and more frequent update for AAA titles, and looks like they're implementing that in order to make AMD more competitive. And one thing I'm going to be doing different than other reviews is that I'm going to be including 4K VSR as well as 1440p VSR benchmarks, so that people who have 1080p monitor or 1440p monitor can see how can game at 4K or for 1080p monitor, so they could game at 1440p. And I'm basically going to show you why Fury X running in single GPU as well as in Crossfire makes it the Bugatti of graphics cards. So what I'll be doing is going through all the heavyweights of benchmarking all the heavyweight games. That includes Tomb Raider, Metro Last Night, Redux, Battlefield 4, and the older Battlefield 3, just to see how it runs on an older game, as well as the newest Battlefront, so along with Crysis 3. So you'll get a really good idea of how the new Crimson driver software performs on these graphics on the Fury X. Now the test system that I'm going to use is going to be a Core i7 6700K overclocked to 4.5 GHz. Now the reason I did that is because to remove any bottleneck that we may have with the CPU if it was clock lower. And the motherboard I'm going to be using is a new Z170 XP SLI GIGABYTE motherboard, as well as 16GB DDR4 Corsair Vengeance RAM, and the XFX R9 Fury X is going to be the brand for the Fury X. Now first I'm going to start off with the benchmarks, synthetic benchmarks for Uni-Engine and 3D Mark 11, as well as 3D Mark Firestrike. Now I'm not really a big fan of doing any synthetic benchmarks because that doesn't actually show the actual performance of in-game, but I'm just going to do it for the sake of doing. Now one thing I'd like to mention is that if you don't know what VSR means, it's stands for virtual super resolution, and what basically does is it scales, it actually renders the game at a higher resolution, say 4K, and it fits that into a 1080p monitor. Let's say if that's the highest resolution that your monitor supports, and I can tell you that running the game at 4K does indeed look significantly better than running it on a native 1080p monitor, and that's one of the great benefits of getting a graphics card like Fury X that supports VSR. So I'm going to be showing you benchmarks for VSR, and I'm going to show you that it's very playable, and it's not what at least with the newer drivers, it's not what people said when the Fury X launched in June. So in other words, 4K is very playable on Fury X with the newer drivers, and it runs very silky smooth. So basically you'll see why the Fury X is much more refined and more polished with the new drivers, and much more acceptable by. Now this is how the Chrisman software looks like. As you can see, you have gaming where you have all your games, and video, you have all your video settings and display where you could turn on your virtual super resolution, software, and overview. And so basically it's a very slick and really neat interface, and I certainly think it's better than what they had before. Now to kick things up, I'm going to first quickly go through some synthetic benchmarks. So first we have Uni-Engine, and I have this at very high tessellation, 8 times AA, and basically all the settings maxed out, and I got a score of 66.8 for frames per second, and a score of 1682. So that's my score. And for Firestrike, I have a score of 13,379, and Skydive 30,414, Cloud 29,774, and Ice Storm I got 179,873. And for 3D Mark 11 I got P 16,190. So the first game to kick things off is going to be Tomb Raider, which was released in 2013, and if you know, that was one of the showcases of AMD's Stress Effects technology, and the game looked excellent. And I'm gonna have all the in-game settings maxed out, setting on ultimate preset with Stress FX on and FXAA. And as you can see from the benchmarks, at 4K VSR got 44 frames per second. 44 frames per second. At 1440p VSR it's 102, and at 1080p is 117. Next up we have Metro Last Night Redux. Now this is a follow-up to Metro 2033, which had excellent graphics, and this is raises the bar in graphics and makes heavy use of tessellation. So I have these settings at very high quality with very high tessellation and 16 times anisotropic filtering. And at 4K VSR I got 36 frames. At 1440p VSR I got 72, and at 1080p I got 108 frames. Next up we have Crysis 3. Now this is a follow-up to Crysis 2, and as you know, Crysis is known for its graphics, and the first Crysis game basically pushed hardware technology to the max, and this Crysis 3 also pushes hardware when it came out back in 2013, and at 4K, and this is one of the demanding games that I benched. Now the frame rates I got for Crysis 3 is at 4K at VSR is 30 frames, at 1440p VSR 57 frames, and at 1080p I got 80. Next up we have Battlefield 4. I have everything at ultra settings with 4 times MSA. Now I did not enable Mantle to do this benchmark because I wanted to see how, I'm going to give you a reference point as to how it compares to NVIDIA graphics card, which does not work with the Mantle. So the frame rates I got for Battlefield 4 is at 4K I got 40 frames per second. At 1440p VSR I got 73 frames, and at 1080p I got 103 frames, and it all ran silky smooth. So next I also went ahead and did benchmark for Battlefield 3. So at 4K VSR I got 52 frames, at 1440p VSR I got 103 frames, and at 1080p I got 157 frames per second. Now last but not least we have Battlefront, and this is probably one of the best looking games that came out this year, if not the best looking game, and I had all in game settings maxed out with 100% the resolution scale with FXA high and ultra quality, and I can tell you at 4K it looks gorgeous. And so at 4K VSR I got 47 frames at 1440p VSR. I got 83 frames, and at 1080p I got 112. Now the performance increase on the Crimson driver versus the previous driver is around 1 to 3% at 1440p. And now you have to remember that if you do have an older driver, or if you go to compare it to the June drivers, the performance increase is much more significant, which I'll show you later on. Now with respect to 4K performance increase, according to AMD, with some newer games the performance increase about 5, 10, 15% depending on the game. Now many of these games hasn't been released, obviously Battlefront has, but some of these upcoming games that are about to come out, the performance increase with the new Crimson are very significant, which is good. Now next I'm going to show you the performance increase from June with the new drivers. Now this is not the new Crimson drivers, but the ones that came before it. And the performance increase is now very significant. Now it has caught up to the 980 Ti at 1440p. Now if you remember during launch, I'm just being honest with you, the 1440p Fury X did come up short against the 980 Ti, but now it has matched the 980 Ti, so it has a significant boost. And these are a benchmark compilation of over a dozen or so AAA titles, so that's a very good performance increase and very good news for AMD. Now next I'm going to show you 4K benchmarks. Now remember with the Fury X you could implement VSR, so if you have a 1080p or 1440p monitor you could still do gaming at 4K. So these benchmarks are important, and it shows that now AMD has leapfrogged Nvidia with their 980 Ti in nearly every single benchmark. So on average is beating it by at least 4%, and I'm going to later on show you at SLI benchmarks versus the Crossfire X, Fury X versus the 980 Ti SLI. The Fury X completely dominates the 980 Ti, even beating the Titan X in Crossfire versus the SLI configuration. So there should be no reason right now to get 980 Ti, because at 4K is on average is beating the 980 Ti, and at SLI configuration versus the Crossfire X totally dominating the 980 Ti. So I'm going to show you that later on. So at 4K on average it's an easy win for AMD, where it's dominating the 980 Ti. Next I'm going to show you some SLI benchmarks versus Fury X Crossfire, and you'll see that Fury X in Crossfire is dominating the 980 Ti SLI, even beating the Titan X. So the games in Battlefield 4, in Grid Autosport, in Shadow of Mordor, as well as in Thief. So I'm just gonna give you some time to take a look at those. So there you have it in Metro last night, and Tomb Raider, and Thief, and Battlefield 4. Basically in half a dozen or so games that was benchmarked by Tweaktown. Now that's not me, that was benchmarked by Tweaktown. The Fury X Crossfire is totally dominating the 980 Ti SLI in every single benchmark, and it's even beating the Titan X in most of these benchmarks, Titan X SLI. So that's not just amazing, that's just fantastic. So there should be no reason to get a 980 Ti if you're going SLI when you could go Fury X. Now one thing I want to show you is the deviations of Crossfire versus SLI. So as you can see, when you compare the Titan X SLI versus the Fury X SLI, the deviations are fantastic for the Fury X. At dual GPUs only minus 7%, while the Titan X SLI is minus 11. In triple GPUs minus 21 for Titan X, and the Fury X is only minus 13, and in quad GPUs minus 29%, and Fury X is only minus 22%. And the ideal frame times is also significantly better than in the Fury X. There should be no reason for you to get Titan X SLI when you could get Fury X, in which case you'll save over $800, and in most games you'll be getting faster frames and as well as better frame time. So you'll save what, over $800. This makes it easily the best price performance multi GPU configuration, and the fact that AMD is beating $2,000 setup for only around $1,140, that's nothing short of amazing. So kudos to AMD's driver team. So next I'm going to show you some picture quality comparisons. Now, over 10 years ago they used to compare picture quality between the two GPU manufacturers, and for some reason major tech sites has moving away from that, and so I was doing some research as to find out which has better picture quality, and it does look like AMD does have the better picture quality. And I guess it's not a surprise, because if you ever used an AMD GPU and moved over to AMD or ATI back in the day, then you would know that ATI or AMD does offer better picture quality. And as you can see from the tank here, on the sides of the tank you'll see much better detail, much better color mixture, while on the NVIDIA side it's kind of bland and not very detailed, and it's much more vibrant on the AMD side. Now if you look at the next picture where you have the building, if you look at the building floors, you'll see where black is black, and if you look at the gloves, it's much more vibrant, much more detailed, while on the bottom where you see the glove, and it's kind of seems like very faint or a bit soft, not as vibrant and rich as the AMD. So it's AMD easily the better color producer for games, and as well as vibrancy. Now with respect to overclocking, I intentionally did not overclock the Fury X, just because that my overclocking experience will be different from other overclocking experience. Not every graphics card is the same. So a lot of people say the 900 series, the GTX 970, 980, 980 Ti are great overclockers, and if you look at some of the forums, not everyone's getting the overclocked specs that other people are getting. So it varies from graphics card to graphics card. So some reviewers may be getting a very good graphics card that is very good at overclocking, and when you actually go out and buy, let's say, a 980 Ti or a 970 or 980, and you may not actually overclock as well as the reviewers claim. So I wanted to stay away from that. I just wanted to provide you to show you what's the best out of the box experience, and in this case is the Fury X over the 980 Ti or the Titan X, especially when it comes to SLI configurations. So for example, this individual who bought GTX 970, for example, he actually had to downclock his GTX 970 just to get stability, and he had to downclock it by minus 200 megahertz. So just because you read reviews that you can overclock your GPU doesn't necessarily mean you can do it yourself. Now on AMD side, Sapphire did release Sapphire Trix X, which allows you to lock your voltage and overclock, so you can unlock your high bandwidth memory voltage, and some people are getting significant performance increase at 1200 core and 600 megahertz increases, sometimes even faster than 980 Ti G1, and it's getting like almost 30 to 50 frames increase. So I'm just giving an example, doesn't mean that you could get it, so I just wanted to stay away from overclocking. Now with respect to pricing, it's the Fury X you could get it for 570 as low as, and for the 980 Ti you could get for 620. So there's a $50 price difference. So that's an much better deal, because not only is the Fury X faster, but it's also cheaper than the 980 Ti. So in summary, I'm just going to go over some of the pros of the Fury X. Now, is 3 teraflops more powerful than the 980 Ti. It has much greater bandwidth, 170 GB per second, much wider bit bus, and which feeds that much larger speed, and so that makes it ideal for 4K and 1440p, where the 980 Ti gets beaten by the Fury X at 4K. Now it basically dominates the 980 Ti SLI in every single benchmark, even beating the Titan X SLI. So it shows you around $840 if you do go the Fury X route over the 980 Ti X SLI. Now with respect to temperatures, we got it as low as 22 degrees Celsius in idle, and under load it was around 49 degrees. And another great feature is that you have VSR, so 1080p monitor owners could play the game at 1440p and 4K, and it has a much better UI with the new Crimson drivers and much significant performance boost now. If you look at my other video where I criticize AMD, now they're offering much more frequent WHQL driver updates, and as well as more frequent updates for major AAA titles. As for the 4 GB memory allocation issue, I did not experience any stuttering or anything else with respect to 4K gaming. And if you remember, if you look at the AnandTech review that came out in the summer, AMD actually allocated 2 engineers working on memory allocation, and they seem to have done a very good job because there's no issues with stuttering or memory issues with the 4 GB HBM1 limit. So, and the cons is that um, I just want to be downright frank and honest that the performance of the Crimson drivers should have been launched when the Fury X launched. The performance increase in the drivers, like I said in the other video where I critiqued AMD, I mean, I just tell it like it is. These drivers and the performance increase should have launched when the Fury X launched, because I know people who bought 980 Ti as well as people all over the world, when they looked at the benchmarks and saw the Fury X losing at 1440p and at 980 Ti, basically drawing the 980 Ti at 4K, many of them switched over to or went to the 980 Ti over the Fury X, and that in turn resulted in lost sales. I mean, it's as simple as that. And the fact that it was the same price didn't help the sales of the Fury X. So right now it's $50 cheaper than the 980 Ti, and that should have been done from the beginning of the get-go. And one other criticism I like to make is that I think they should continue to offer more day one drivers for AAA titles, and I think they just should call it day one drivers instead of beta drivers, because a lot of people think that when they think about beta drivers, they want to go buy a graphics card from a company that quote unquote only releases beta drivers for AAA titles, because AMD, Nvidia has game ready drivers, which are in many cases are just beta drivers. They just call it game ready drivers, not day one drivers. So just call it day one drivers AMD, and just that'll make you look much better and when compared to Nvidia. So there you have it, folks. My complete review of the Fury X. Now at 4K gaming, as more and more games support 4K gaming natively, AMD is just gonna with the Fury X, and the Fury is gonna be pulling ahead of the 980 Ti or the 900 series more and more. It's similar to what happened with the PS4 and Xbox One, where the PS4 was a much powerful console, just like the Fury X is more powerful than the 980 Ti. And as more and more games came out, with respect to the PS4 and Xbox One, you saw PS4 supporting 1080p and doing better at 1080p resolution. So it's going to be the same thing with the Fury X versus the 980 Ti. You're going to see more and more games running better on the Fury X over the next couple of years. So you should not, under any circumstances, should be choosing the 980 Ti over the Fury X just by the fact that it's much more superior and much more powerful hardware. Another thing I like to mention is the support of FreeSync. Now, as you know, with Intel backing FreeSync is flooding the market. So at 1080p displays is much significantly cheaper than G-Sync. At 4K is much cheaper than G-Sync. With respect to the number of displays on the market, it's beating G-Sync from around 10 IPS displays to 17 IPS displays for FreeSync, and it has much better accurate colors from 30% for G-Sync to around 52%. So in any way it's possible, FreeSync is gaining traction. So that's another reason you should choose the Fury X over the 980 Ti. One thing I like to mention, the Fury X is one of the most exquisitely designed graphics card, reference graphics card that I've ever seen. I've been following the graphics card industry for nearly 20 years, and the attention to detail and the nice chrome looking feel to it, and the Radeon logo lighting up, it looks absolutely gorgeous. You actually have to buy it and actually see it in real life to actually see how great it looks. So it looks much better than the 980 Ti. So we have to give props to AMD engineers for paying attention to detail, and the fact that they were able to put such a large chip on 28 nanometers and put such an amazing graphics card on 28 nanometers with the limited R&D budget. That goes to testament to how great AMD engineers have done. And imagine what they could do if they had a larger R&D budget like Nvidia does. So I'm pretty sure AMD would be doing much. AMD engineers would be able to put a much better graphics card. So kudos to them. So my final score, how would I rate it? I would give it a 9.5 out of 10, and I'm gonna give it the Full HD 1080p Engineering Innovation Award because it was first to HBM, and that's quite an accomplishment for AMD. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you can't afford the Fury X, I strongly suggest you get the regular Fury. If you look at my other videos, the regular Fury is also beating the 980 Ti in SLI. 980 Ti SLI versus the Fury in Crossfire. So check that video out, and now I believe it's down to $500, and you get a copy of Battlefront. So, and if you're getting a 980, if you're getting thinking about getting a 980 Ti, don't buy it. And if you know someone else who's getting a 980 Ti, just tell them to get the Fury X, and just share this video. I mean, it's faster, cheaper, cooler, quieter, smaller, and even if it was the same price, doesn't make sense to choose the 980 Ti over the Fury X. So I'm going to have all the benchmarks for the 4K and the 1440 VSR benchmarks, as long as all these other benchmarks on my site/blog. So check that out if you want to see a more detailed information about the performance of this graphics card, and a summary of all the things I've said. I hope I didn't run too long in this video. I just wanted to provide as detailed and most accurate information as possible. So sorry for going a bit overboard with the time limit. I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching, and feel free to subscribe.